Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, this epic quest of awesomeness is our resident anime gods, the Cat. Cat, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. I just ate a bunch of, crescent pizza rolls that I made in the oven, and, I ate, 10 of them before coming to this recording, so I may fall asleep, or die of pepperoni assault. But otherwise, I'm good.
Pepperoni poisoning, is that actually a thing?
If you've eaten as much pepperoni in the last half hour as I have.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll keep paramedics on hand with a stomach pump. All right, and Mike, how are you doing this week?
I still function. It's been a hell of a week, but I'm doing good, doing okay.
Tuesday.
Yeah, it's only Tuesday when you wake up as rudely as I have today. I'm not going to go in the details, but okay, I'll just say this. I woke up to nearly dying at one point, and it's been an interesting day ever since. But yeah, doing good. Sitting here with Ayla as we record this podcast. It's International Black Cat Day, so Dr. Wiley's having a bath and looking at me like I have multiple heads. So it's a good day.
Okay, all right. Well, we got a fun show for you guys this week. This week we're talking about Loki, the 6-part Disney Plus series following Tom Hiddleston's God of Mischief. So gonna be an interesting show. So, but of course, there's procedure files for you to be in, as always, with Ask a Geek. And we got a few questions here. So, alrighty, here's one for you, Kat. This one comes from Rick, and he asked, you mentioned on the show that you used to work at a Renaissance fair. What is your favorite Renaissance fair act?
Gosh, I don't know if they still perform, but in the Maryland Fair and traveling to wherever else they would go to, there was a pair called Hack and Slash.
Oh, I love Hack and Slash.
Hack and Slash, 2 men, 2 swords, 1 stage, rock hard masculine bodies, let the swooning begin. Oh, they were just like a comedy, sword whip cracking, just really fun group. There was Hack was the kind of buffoony bigger guy who was very pompous. He was like a knight kind of character, and then Slash was more of his squire kind of character, but was obviously way smarter and would make fun of him without him knowing it. And I used to, when I worked at the Renaissance Festival that one year that I worked at all the game booths, giving breaks to all of the people who worked every game booth. And I would always end up at the next to one of their stages while they were performing, and I knew all of the hawking that Slash did to get people to come to the show, and I would sit there and just say the lines along with him. And then one day Hack was just watching me repeat all these lines, was like, you've seen this too many times. And then Slash was also a part of a group called the Tartan Terrors, who is a Canadian group of Celtic, kilt wearing musical acts and comedy, and just really, really fun. Slash's real name is Spencer Hum, and he's actually a comedian. I don't know if they still do Ren fairs or not, but I loved watching them so much. Enjoyed Johnny Fox as well, who's a sword swallower. Rest in peace, Johnny Fox. They named a stage after him at the Maryland Fair after he died 2 years ago, I think.
Oh, it's longer than that.
Oh, 3 years? I don't know.
No, longer than that. I was still living in the condo when he passed away, and that was 4 or 5 years ago.
4 or 5 years. God, time has no meaning anymore. Gosh, I also liked a group called the London Broil. I don't remember what they did. A lot of juggling and tricks and stuff like that. I don't really care about the acts as much as the fact that they would juggle torches or big knives, and they'd be like, good thing we practiced in the car. And I thought that was the greatest line I've ever heard. But there's a lot of groups out here at the St. Louis Fair that are pretty good, but I'm not as engaged with them as I was at the ones back at the Maryland Fair, because I grew up going to the Maryland Fair. I felt like everybody in Maryland had to go to the Maryland Fair. It was a requirement to be alive, that you had to go at least once in your life. And we would go every year, multiple times a year.
Being born and raised in Maryland, yeah, I can tell you, attendance to the Maryland Renaissance Fair is required for your voter registration in Maryland. You have to go at least once.
If you don't know, this is a really interesting piece of trivia, but the state sport of Maryland is jousting.
Yet we don't have a team.
But
there are people jousting right now. I'm just saying.
But it's the state sport, and it's honestly one of the I don't know for sure what the ratings are, but it is one of the best Renaissance festivals in the country. And I know this because it ended up on one of those TV shows, one of those Food Channel TV shows. I can't remember what the circumstance.
They had a movie film there. It was called Max Magician and the Legend of the Rings, and it was god awful, but it's fun. But it's hysterical to watch as a Maryland resident, or if you've been to the fair, because you recognize, like, they don't even change any of the signage. So, like, the steak on a steak booth, it's just sitting there in the middle of this what's supposed to be an important scene. The princess is like, Max, you need to save the kingdom. In the back room, there's a fucking steak on a steak booth, which, for those who don't know what that is, it is exactly what it says on tin. It is a steak on a stick.
Tis not just a meal, tis a weapon. Like, our friend and her entire family worked at Steak on a Steak, and at the end of every day of fair, I would, we carpooled, so I would just go to the booth and get a bunch of free steak and curly fries at the end of it.
Do you remember the song from the Steak on a Steak booth?
Steak on a steak, nave on a bun, fries that taste nice, something, come everyone.
Okay, then that's a different song than the one
They had a few.
Oh, because I remember you take the high road, I'll take the low road, and I'll eat a sausage before you. The chickens all will smile when on steaks the beefy pile, but the cows will never again say they love me.
That doesn't sound familiar.
An old girlfriend told me that one because she worked at the Steak on a Steak booth. Our social circle seems to revolve around steaks on sticks. But circling back to Hack and Slash, my favorite line of theirs was, I don't remember exactly how it led up to it, but Hack is basically naming different cities in Maryland, and Slash is going death, destruction. They get to Dundalk, and Slash just says Friday night, and that's funny to me because anyone who in Maryland knows Dundalk is an absolute shithole. It is basically Mad Max in a sewage pipe over there.
Oh God. My favorite line, other than Slash's hawking, which he would say, he'd crack a whip and then go, poodle juggling, crack, cat shaving, crack, high wire unicycle, banjo baptisms. It would just be absolute nonsense. But my favorite bit that he did, he would lay on a bed of nails, and he would say to do this daring stunt, I will be removing my shirt, and I will do this shirt off. And to do this stunt, I'll be removing my belt, and I'll do this belt off. And to do this stunt, I will be removing my jerkin, and I will be doing this stunt. And then he would just let it ride. Oh, I miss those guys so much. I know they don't do, they basically got retired out of the Maryland Fair because they'd been there for 15 years or something. But I just loved them so much. I spend most days hoping, I hope Spencer Hum is having a good day. So much fun. I love the Renaissance Fair. It's one of these things where, as soon as there's not a pandemic, I'd really like to come home to Baltimore to go to the Renaissance Festival. If we could just not have a pandemic anymore.
Hey, you know what? If you do come up this way, I got a pull-out couch bed that you can use.
One of my friends already offered me a guest room at his house.
Alrighty. Mike, you're looking a little left out here, so let's see if we got here a question for you. Okay, here's one. It's actually for both you and Kat. What is a D&D style game that you would absolutely love to try but have not had the opportunity to play?
Oh boy, fun one. Well, I would love to be a player in a Cyberpunk Red game, which is based obviously on Cyberpunk 2020. Cyberpunk 2077 was the game that is set in that world, but 30 years later from the latest box set. That's produced by Artal Saurian, fantastic game company, by the way. I actually just got this book the other day for review. I'm actually reading it right now. It comes from the same company who produces Star Trek Adventures, Modifius. They did the Fallout RPG, and not the one that involves minis, which I think is called Wasteland Warfare, but an actual pen and paper Fallout game. And there was an unlicensed one years back. It's complicated. You can go kind of look it up, but this looks fun as hell. And finally, if I had one game to play, I've only played this game once, but I really liked it. It's from Free League Publishing, and it's the official Alien RPG. And the Colonial Marines source book just came out, and with Alien Fire Team Elite coming out on the 24th, it's got my Alien hype going. This is the Aliens 35th anniversary year. I'm super excited. And literally about an hour before this podcast recorded, Hasbro Pulse put out a pre-order for a Nerf pulse rifle that's more or less in scale. It's got the electronic counter, it's got a working grenade launcher, and it's ludicrously cheap. Doesn't come out till next year, but get your pre-orders in now. My wife got it for me for next year because he's like, oh, I can pay this off in a year. What am I worried about? So yeah, those are 3 games I'd love to play.
Okay, Kat, what about you?
Okay, I'm a little more basic. I still want to play a game of Vampire the Masquerade.
Which setting? Would you do classic, or would you do version 5, which is the new setting and the new meta?
Well, considering I bought a copy of the classic at like a little gaming auction, like a full box set kind of deal for like nothing, I would like to play the classic. I don't want to run it.
I would run that for you guys. Not a problem. I love old World of Darkness, though it does have some problematic elements to it. Look at the Ravenos for an example of what I'm talking about. But yeah, I love old World of Darkness stuff. So I'm right there with you, man.
Let's see, what else did I want to do? Oh, I also bought copies of Adventures in Middle-earth. I just need to sit down and, I have sat down and pored over. I have read every page of the Game Master Handbook and the Player's Handbook, and that is hundreds and hundreds of pages. I just haven't sat down and wrote a campaign yet.
Is that the old version or the new version?
The old version.
Okay.
And I basically got voluntold that I would have to GM it. Because among my friends, although we are all Lord of the Rings fans, I got furthest in the Silmarillion, therefore I have to run the game.
You're into that Lord of the Rings stuff, Kat. There actually was a Kickstarter that came out earlier this year that updates, I think, the game you're talking about to a 2nd edition, and I think it comes out next year.
I think I've heard of that. I'm going to stick with the fact that I've only GM'd like 3 times ever and stick to the books that I've already paid for.
Fair enough.
Until I run out of material through there. Last one I want to do is and again, I bought all of the books for it and I just haven't written a campaign yet, is Spire by Grant Howitt. Grant Howitt makes all of these amazing, absolutely stunning one-page RPGs like Honey Heist and Goblin Quest and Sexy Battle Wizards, which is one of the only things I've ever DM'd. And but he did this big book called Spire, and I love the plot of it. The plot is just like, hey, you're a bunch of dark elves, and your home, the Spire, has been like basically taken over by a bunch of fancy high elves, and you play a terrorist sect who is there to overthrow them at all costs.
Funny you mentioned that. One of the projects that I used to work with years ago was These Warriors Are Terrible, now just known as Terrible Warriors. And the game master, Justin, is actually running a campaign in the Spire right now, I think, or has run one previously on the website, terriblewarriors.com. And I know in the monthly tip game, you can join via the Patreon. They play the Spire. And it seems like a lot of people are having a pretty good time with it. And it's an interesting concept. I like the idea of you playing an evil race that isn't necessarily evil. You're trying to free your people and change how the Spire works and change the politics and the internal parts of the city. It's a very interesting game with a lot of cool moving parts and a lot of player agency to make cool stuff happen.
Yeah, one of the things that because I heard an actual play of it that Grant ran for a group. So of course it was DM'd the way it needed to be DM'd. And with the person most knowledgeable. But I think the thing that I really liked was like the kinds of character, it's not what they call it, but like the character classes are really interesting. They have like an idol who can basically like manipulate you. It's like the equivalent of a bard almost, who is just so beautiful, like you can't even hit them in the face, they're so beautiful. And I just find that really fun. And there's in one of the supplementals, there's like a character class where you're like a bee wizard and you're made of bees and you can release bees on people. I'm just like, this is so great. Everything about it is so interesting, and it would be really fun, I think, if you've got a group who are a bunch of murder hobos who are just gonna like tear some shit up, and you're like, here you go. Your actions will definitely have really horrific consequences.
I'm having flashbacks to that zero punctuation joke in the BioShock review where he talks about the magical hand that shoots bees and says, I don't care who you are, whenever you're compared to a magical hand that shoots bees, you're going to fucking lose.
Exactly. It's the bees.
Okay. All right. Well, this seems to be the day of long questions, and I got one here that comes with a bit of a longer answer. This one comes from Paul, and he asked me if I've ever had a game purchasing deal go bad. Not in the sense of like I wound up getting, sold something fake, or paid a lot of money for something that turned out to be a dud, or someone pulled out at the last second. I did have one deal that wasn't really a deal. It was, well, I'll just tell the story. So for a bit of context, one of the ways that I finance my collection is I will buy lots of games. Like, I'll go to like yard sales or something, or if someone's looking to sell their stuff on Craigslist, and I'll buy like, collections of like 10 or 15 games. I'll keep the ones I don't have, and then I'll turn around and resell the rest on eBay. And so that's one of the ways that I finance my collection. So that answers the unspoken question from last episode from Mike about how the hell I can afford to take $2,000 on a game buying trip. That's how.
Oh.
Make your hobbies work for you. And I got a buddy of mine does the same thing. Well, he calls me up one day and he says, I got someone here who's looking to sell a collection, not a lot, a collection. And it's not something that I can afford, but it might be something that you might be interested in because it's a pretty sizable collection. Like, can I give them your number? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So next day I get a call, and it's from this woman, and she says, are you the game buyer? And I'm like, well, my name is whatever, but yeah, I buy games. What are you looking to sell? And so it's a bunch of PlayStation, Nintendo, Xbox games. I'm just looking to unload them. And I'm like, well, okay, what kind of stuff is in there? Can you give me, some of the titles that you have? Are they, what condition they're in? I just need them unloaded. I just need them gone. And this is kind of starting to get a little suspicious. I'm like, okay, this is a little unusual, because most people who are looking to sell games, they give you details about what they have, but this is a pretty motivated seller. So I'm like, okay, all right, well, I can't just drop money sight unseen. How big is the collection? Is there? Could you maybe send me some photos? And I was like, yeah, I'm not looking for a whole lot. I'm just looking to get rid of it. And I'm like, well, okay, all right. This is I still need some more information. And it's like, oh, it's my boyfriend's collection. We're having some, we're having some financial changes, and we just need to sell this because we need the money. So that's the first red flag. I'm like, well, okay, is there a chance I could talk to your boyfriend, because I still need some more details about this collection? Look, we're really just looking to get rid of this as soon as possible. So finally, like, okay, it's time to put the brakes on this. So I said, ma'am, does your boyfriend know you're talking to me about selling his collection? Line gets real quiet. No, he doesn't know.
What the fuck?
And I'm like, okay. This is the question that I probably ought to walk away from this right now, but I just got to ask, why are you trying to sell your boyfriend's collection? It's like, oh, because he just spends too much time playing it. And I'm like, okay, well then, ma'am, in that case, I just gotta say, I'm sorry, can't buy this collection. Hope things between you and your boyfriend work out. And then I hung up. So that's probably that would have been the worst deal I ever made, because it would just come with a whole bunch of drama, and I don't deal with that. But like, that I hate that story because it feeds into like, there's always that joke about like, the unapproving girlfriend stereotype, and like this woman was basically that made flesh, and it's just like, it just goes to the old adage that like, it wouldn't be a stereotype if there wasn't an element of truth to it somewhere. So, but that's probably the closest I've gotten to an actual bad deal in terms of my game collecting.
I can think of one thing, and it's really short. It's not involving game collecting, but sort of along the same line. So I was in college about 10 or 12 years ago, and me and Blair, we've been together for a couple of months, and we're driving around Welland, which is the town where my college was from, Niagara College, and we come across this yard sale, and there's all these boxed Transformers. And I'm like, holy shit. And she is blowing them out at stupid prices. So I look at Blair, I'm like, this lady doesn't know what she has. Get everything. So we did. So we pay for it, we're loading it into the car, and we're just getting ready to leave. And I hear this woman talking. He's like, oh yeah, I'm selling this stuff because my husband's in jail. We need to raise bail money or something along those lines. And that's the only time I've ever felt slimy about buying something. So I was like, ew, convict stuff. But hey, I don't know what crime it was. She could have been full of shit. I don't know. I'm going to choose to believe maybe this wasn't evil. But it's about the closest I've ever gotten to a bad deal. But I've never heard of anybody actually running into the disapproving girlfriend thing. Wow.
Yeah, that was after that phone call, I was just like, this is something straight out of like a TV sitcom.
Mm-hmm.
Like I never heard from her again, but like, I called my buddy up afterwards, and I was like, okay, the next time someone asks you think you want to give someone my number about selling a game lot, make sure that the person selling it is the person the collection actually belongs to. Unless they're like dead, because like a lot of there have been times where I've been called like, look, I got this collection of games to sell, and I'm selling it because whoever owned it passed away, and we just need to get it out of the house. So, but that is all the Ask Geek questions that we have for this week. Thank you as always for sending them in. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdtothethirdpower.com. Love getting your questions, love reading them on the air. So go ahead and get your questions in, and you just might get yours read on the show. And so with that, we are going to launch into the meat and potatoes of this episode with Marvel's Loki, the 6-part Disney Plus streaming series, which has been out for a while, but because of the pandemic and other shit going on in our lives, we're only just now getting to it. So this should be an interesting discussion. So let's just get right down into it. So let's just start with our general thoughts on Loki, starting with you, Kat. Let's start with you this week.
Loki. It was great. I really enjoyed it so much. I never thought I'd just be head over heels for an Owen Wilson role. I was just so impressed. Key problem of Loki with me 100%. Very strong to have. I really liked Tom Hiddleston's performance was obviously quite good. And I'm very, very interested in all the things that it is setting up and what we're going to see from here on out.
Mike, what about you? General thoughts on Loki?
This is the strongest character piece of the Disney streaming services or the Disney streaming shows so far. This is a great character piece looking at something. Now, I will fully admit this disclosure right here, full transparency. When the Loki series was announced a couple of years ago, I could not give a shit. I thought it was a stupid idea. And then I saw the series, and I thought it was an interesting concept. And then I finished the 6 episodes, and I was absolutely blown away. Tom Hiddleston is a wonderful actor. He is Loki. Much like Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man, this man is Loki. This role will probably never be truly recast. And the interplay with Sylvie caught me. because there's a lot of philosophical questions that came out of this, and I was just genuinely surprised that Disney would bank Phase 4's true opening of the multiverse on a streaming show that you more or less have to see to understand a lot of stuff that will happen in the multiverse of madness and probably Spider-Man No Way Home later on this year. Marvel took the risk by introducing Kang the Conqueror on a television show and not a movie, because he's supposed to be in Ant-Man and Quantumania whenever that comes out. So I was astounded Disney took the risk. They've proven that they can, and I'm blown away by it.
It looks like I'm the odd man out, so I'm just going to go ahead and rip off the Band-Aid. I didn't like it. The reasons for which, I mean, we'll get into as we start discussing the component parts of the show. But it just didn't do it for me. So, but like I said, we'll get into that as we get into the story's component parts. So let's start with the story. So who wants to give the recap this week?
I actually haven't seen it since it came out. I've only read summaries since. Basically, long story short, I'm just going to leave a lot of this out. The story picks up seconds after Avengers Endgame, where Loki escapes with the Tesseract when they go back to the Battle of 2012. He's picked up by the Time Variance Authority, which is this multiversal agency that protects the quote-unquote sacred timeline as protected by the Timekeepers. And basically, they go through space and time looking for events. Events should only play out a certain way. Basically, if you are at a crossroads and you are supposed to go left, but you choose right, they're going to come and say, you're a variant. You're not supposed to exist. They will take you to the Time Variance Authority and deal with your crimes against the timeline. More often than not, you are probably pruned, aka deleted permanently, though not really. And the timeline is reset and protected so it can proceed from point A to point B with no deviations. What happens in the universe of this is their events are called nexus points. Like I said, that crossroads. And if the crossroad gets to a certain point, it creates a new multiverse. You can correct it within a certain time period, generally not too long, maybe a few hours or less, depending on the severity of it. And Loki gets brought into the TVA, and they ask him a bunch of really weird questions, like, are you a robot? And he's like, wait, people don't know that they're robots. And eventually he meets up with Owen Wilson, who is the most Owen Wilson that ever Owen Wilson, though not a single wow in the entire series. I'd like to point that out. And he plays Mobius, who's kind of assigned to him. And they're tracking down this threat that is killing the TVA Minutemen, which are basically their agents that are in the field. And we find out it's another Loki variant. And more often than not, the Lokis across the multiverse cause more problems than they're worth. Some of them may have succeeded where Thanos failed. Some of them are Tour de France bicycle winners for some reason. One is an alligator, who is amazing. One is Loki in his classic 1960s costume, who survived Thanos' attack on the Asgardian ship and was living in exile until he literally just got lonely and wanted a friend. And it follows Loki and Sylvie's adventures across the timeline to destroy the Timekeepers, because one of the big components about Loki is to talk about what is the nature of free will, what is the nature of destiny, do you have agency to decide who you are and where you will go? And Loki's obviously he's billed as the god of mischief. And at one point in the series, they question that. I'm like, you're not the god of mischief, you're an asshole. And he's kind of like, wait, what? But I'm whimsical. And like, no, you're cruel. You're mean. Stop. And he's like, but I never saw it like that. And like, we know. And then the series concludes where Sylvie, who's the female variant Loki from the very beginning, they confront a guy known as Immortus, who is He Who Lives or something. Cat, help me out. Is that what it was?
He Who Remains.
Yeah, He Who Remains. And this guy has been the architect of the sacred timeline for untold millions of years. And the reason that is because he is a variant himself. And at one point, there was this huge multi-spatial war, and eventually he stopped every single variant of himself from coming to power. And this is the most friendly variant. And he says, I know everything you're going to do up until this moment. So what are you going to do? Are you going to kill me? Or are you going to take over the TVA and now it's your responsibility? And then what follows is this big battle between Sylvie and Loki. And you can tell they do not want to fight each other. And it ends on a very bittersweet note. And the timeline is different. Loki starts running through the TVA. He wants to find Mobius. I'm leaving a lot out here because I don't want you to find out what happens. And he's like, wait, you don't know who I am? And he's like, who? And Owen Wilson's like, who are you? And the camera turns to the left. And one of the statues of the Timekeeper is not what they call the lizard people. It's Kang the Conqueror, not He Who Remains. It's literally the guy who is one of the biggest multiversal cosmic threats in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or in Marvel Comics in general. And then the post-credits scene is Loki will return in season 2. And there's a lot of great moments and characters in here. Like I mentioned, there's Alligator Loki, or Croaky as the fandom has called him. He's amusing. There's Boastful Loki, who's a black man version of Loki with this giant Mjolnir-like hammer, who evidently is just a big liar. Classic 60s Loki, who, like I said, hid from Thanos and he's only in about 10 minutes of one episode. But when this character has I'm going to say this, his grand moment, I literally cried, and I did not expect that from a Disney series. Not at all. And I'm trying to think what else. Kat, is there anything that I'm leaving out here?
I mean, you pretty much laid out like just about everything. There's a lot of
nuance I'm leaving out.
There's a lot of the series is just like Loki and Sylvie traveling around, and a lot of self-exploration of Loki kind of coming to grips that he's kind of been a douchebag, and him figuring out what he really wants out of life.
Yeah, there's a scene in, I think it's the first episode, maybe the second, where Mobius sits Loki down in this time prison, and he's able to view his file. And it showed this, I don't want to die. And it's not that existential crisis of I don't wish my consciousness to stop existing. It's that I don't want that. I want to change. And Kat pretty much hit it right on the head there. This is a great series that explores self-analysis and who you want to be, and ultimately who you choose to be. The sacred timeline, for example, is a great metaphor for destiny. And some people believe, there's various philosophies and thought schools around the world that say your life is laid out, you have a destiny. Or as Loki might say during the course of the show, you are burdened with glorious purpose. And
they say that a lot. Glorious purpose.
And it's a great...
You can make a drinking game out of it.
Yeah.
We should.
And it's a great thing to think about, but when you start looking at it, you decide your glorious purpose, not some man or some woman or some cosmic entity out there. It's about choice. And Loki, over the course of the series, as you said, has these moments of self-doubt, self-analysis, and he falls in love with his own variant, which you could see on one level as being extremely narcissistic. But you see a genuine warmth develop between these people. There's a moment where they're on some planet, and Loki's better at magic and conjuring than Sylvie. Sylvie has, it's weird. One of the things that happens with the variant Lokis, some of them have different abilities than other people. For example, 60s Loki, I'll call him, is the master of illusion. They're so realistic and convincing, it fooled Thanos. Sylvie is a master of mind control. For example, Loki from our 616 MCU reality had to use the Mind Stone to turn Hawkeye and to turn other people to help him. Sylvie can just do it by touching them and manipulating memories. Whereas our Loki is good at conjuring stuff, like his knives or hiding things or illusion. He's kind of a jack of all trades, but master of none. And they're sitting outside, and it's a cold day, and he conjures a blanket. And they kind of get close, and they huddle under the blanket together, and she makes a quip. It's like, is this a tablecloth? He's like, no, it's Asgardian. I mean, come on, have a little class here. And I don't know, there's just so many moments of genuine character development, and the chemistry between those two actors is unmatched. The only people I might say come close to it in terms of how you believe and how they interact might be Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda and Vision, where you see there was a love there. There was a warmth. With Sylvie and Loki, it's a doomed to fail romance, and you feel for these characters. Like, there's a moment in the last episode, and it broke my heart to see it unfold in the last 5 minutes. And I got to see what I wanted to see. Kat knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then the betrayal moment happens, and you want them to go back just for 5 more minutes, just so they can live in that happiness. I'm actually getting a little emotional talking about this right now. And that's kind of how I saw things. Sorry, well, I'm literally crying right now, and that makes me look like a giant wuss.
That was a lot. Normally, let's just do a breakdown of the characters. Because we kind of already talked about a lot of different things. Mike sort of ran away with it. So let's talk first about Loki, because we've already said, okay, Tom Hiddleston was really, really great at this. This is really worth pointing out that this is not like the first timeline Loki that gets killed by Thanos. This is like a variant. So it's not the exact same Loki that we've seen the whole time. He hasn't undergone all of that development that happens in the Thor movies. So we're getting one straight out of the Avengers. So I thought that the way that the show handled immediately needing to humanize Loki so that he's not this
evil asshole.
Yeah, like he's not fresh off of the I am a king, kneel before me bullshit. Like, they had to immediately grab him and humanize him, and by making him basically watch all of the bad things that are going to happen to him or would have happened to him, I thought was a great way to do it. Like, hey, here's you dying, here's the destruction of your planet, here's your mom, here's your dad, all of the bad things that have over the course of time made him more less of a douchebag.
And actually, to follow up with that, Cat, talking about humanization, it also shows Thor never giving up on him. And I think that's part of the realization that made him realize, maybe I shouldn't do these things. My brother still loved me no matter what.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. Somebody pointed out that the last scene he sees is Thor holding his body, not from Loki's perspective, but from the outside perspective. Mostly because I assume they didn't want to reshoot a bunch of stuff. But the idea that he gets to see that portion, the genuine grief that Thor actually goes through every time this happens, I thought was just, it was a good punch in the stomach for this variant of Loki. And he was just great. He was great. He was like destined to play this character, like you said. I think it's also worth talking about Mobius, because he was like the second.
Well, hang on, because some of us still haven't given our thoughts on the story yet.
Okay.
So.
You probably should have interrupted me like 5 minutes ago then.
Well, I thought that you were going to give your thoughts on the story. first, so and then I was going to go last, but I guess all right. I guess I'll just go ahead and go.
Well, you're the one who said we only have a half an hour to talk about this, so I was trying to speed it along.
Okay. So swinging back to story, I kind of want to explain my position here, because I don't want people to think that I'm just yucking on other people's yum. But we all have, every one of us, we have like that one trope or whatever that you see it and it just kind of spoils the whole thing for you.
Sorry, I'm trying to type in a password somewhere. Ignore me.
Go on, continue.
All right. So now we know the password to Kat's bank account. Yay!
Yep. That's definitely my bank account and nothing else.
Okay. All right. Well, for me, that particular stay away from this at all costs trope is basically time travel shenanigans, which is ironic to say considering how much I love Doctor Who. The thing is Doctor Who does time travel really well because most of their stories are pretty self-contained. Whereas I don't like it when you introduce time travel and alternate universes to an established timeline and an established canon because it gets very silly very quickly. So, as we go through this episode, you see there's a lot of little stuff that I like. Like I like Tom Hiddleston's performance. I like some of the attention to detail. I like some of the little jokes, the little background jokes. Like, did anybody see the Thanos copter in the Void timeline?
I did, and then there's Frog, Thor, and Mjolnir. There's a lot of little hidden things in this series.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so there's a lot of little stuff that I like, but unfortunately it's that core concept of that there's this governing body that governs the timeline and the time travel and alternate universe that just kind of spoils the whole thing for me. And and with that there's a lot of cliche stuff that I think was kind of cliche, like the reveal of the timekeepers, who one of which I swear is voiced by the same guy who voiced the Prophet of Truth in Halo 2 because he's just every evil overlord ever. But like the reveal that they're actually just robots and there's somebody doing a Wizard of Oz, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain thing. That I'm just like, I don't care for that trope. It just kind of feels cliche to me. Now I didn't, as to Immortus or He Who Remains Himself, I didn't know that because I don't read the comics. I didn't know that he was an alternate of Kang the Conqueror. Because I don't know who the fuck Kang the Conqueror is. Because there's only so much comic book knowledge that you could absorb working in a comic book store for 6 months. But I kind of didn't like his scene because I don't really enjoy it when something that has major impact and gravitas is going on, and one or more characters don't seem to be taking it all that seriously. And He Who Remains, it kind of felt like he was just treating everything as a joke. And it kind of took a lot of the weight of the scene from me. But I mean, swinging back to where Kat was going with the characters, there are some things that I do enjoy. I thought that I don't have the cast this one. Who was the actress who played Sylvie?
Something DiMartino, I think is her last name.
Let me pull it up here.
Had it up, and then I was doing other things.
I can say, yeah. It's weird. When she first came on screen, I thought it was really like a female Loki. But yeah, go on, continue.
Here we go. Yeah, like I thought Sophia DiMartino as Sylvie, like absolutely sold her part. Like she was one of the only characters that I actually that I was able to actually get over the time travel thing to actually feel for, because like she gets a raw deal. Like, well, really everyone does if you think about it based on what's later revealed about the TVA, but like she gets a raw deal, and like you can totally understand why she does the things she does, because like in a moral sense she didn't do anything wrong. She was just minding her own damn business, and then along comes this time variance authority is like, oh nope, you're a variant. You're not supposed to exist. Into time jail with you. So then I thought Tom Hiddleston did like Mike said. I mean, he is Loki. I mean, and that's really all that there is to say about it. Owen Wilson, never liked Owen Wilson, but that's just Owen Wilson.
I really like him in this role, and I don't usually like overly enjoy Owen Wilson. And everybody says like, oh, he was at his most Owen Wilson, and I did not feel like he was very Owen Wilson-y. I really because normally Owen Wilson is portrayed as kind of a doofus. And here he was like very clever.
Very competent.
Very competent. He was like on Loki's level or outsmarting him half the time. Like a genuine like match for Loki's cleverness and, thinking ahead of what Loki was going to do. And I felt like they had really excellent chemistry on screen together as like partners. In the show, I just thought they were really, really stellar.
My problem with Owen Wilson is just I've always thought that his acting is very wooden. Like I don't feel like he has a whole lot of range. It's got nothing to do with like the characters he plays or his writing. It's just his acting style I don't care for.
Okay, but did you feel that way about this show? When he's sitting there talking about how he wants a jet ski, because that was fucking great.
Yeah, this was to me just another Owen Wilson role. I mean, that jet ski conversation, you could cut that out of there and put it in just about any movie he's been in, and it would play out almost exactly the same way.
Really? I thought he was so subdued compared to... Yeah. Like...
This wasn't Wedding Crashers, Owen Wilson. This was, I can give serious Wes Anderson gravitas Owen Wilson if I need to.
Well, we'll just have to agree to disagree, because like I said, I've always found his performance wooden, and this was no exception to me. So we'll just have to agree to disagree on that. A surprise casting that and another little character that I really enjoyed. Tara Strong is Miss Minutes. Was I the only one who was just thoroughly charmed by that character?
I was always from the beginning terrified of Miss Minutes.
I thought she was a clever little thing.
I thought she was shady AF.
Well, duh, but like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a classical animation buff, and the way they animated Miss Minutes was very reminiscent of like the 30s and 40s Disney cartoons. That it just kind of touched on a little nostalgia string in my heart. And the fact that the Tara Strong's voice actor, she's basically doing like evil Twilight Sparkle in that last episode. I was like, wow, I'm suddenly terrified of a voice that I associate with a cute little cartoon pony.
I need to hear Tara Strong in more villain roles or something, because
agreed.
She's very much plays some good villains. But
what? Apple needs to put a Miss Minutes voice to Siri. It would sell so much.
Oh my god, they have a license to print some money.
Oh yeah.
I liked the aesthetic of Miss Minutes so much, because I liked not to get too far away from characters, but she fit the aesthetic of the TVA so well. And that she was like, oh, this cool hologram thing, but it looked so retro. It was really cool.
All right, well, I guess let's start. Since we're talking about aesthetics, let's just start talking about the presentation a bit. And one thing I will say is that when we're not inside the TVA, this series goes ham with its visual presentation. I will unironically say that the shots of the outside of He Who Remains a Citadel, when they're on that they're on that asteroid kind of floating in the void, and the timeline is swirling around them, I thought that was one of the most beautiful shots I've seen in a very long time. I especially loved it, and I'm going to sound like such an art snob saying this, I especially love the use of color in those shots.
It did look good. I liked so much. I liked everything but Tom Hiddleston wearing a suit the whole goddamn thing. Like, I liked the like suit and tie look on everybody but Tom Hiddleston. What a shame that a guy who has such a cool costume was stuck with that haircut and that suit at the same time. That poor. It's not the suit; it's the jacket. He had that dumb-looking jacket. Just
You
did not
mean
work
the
for me.
TVA jacket?
Yeah. Yeah, like that brown jacket or whatever he was wearing. That just did not. It doesn't fit Loki.
I think that's why I liked it, because it was so bizarre. It's like a prison uniform, yet it's very casual. I know you could buy that jacket at Hot Topic, and I think it constantly sells out. Actually, I just got the action figure of Loki in the TVA jacket literally before this podcast started.
I hate it because Sylvie gets to wear a cool costume the whole time.
Yeah.
All the other Lokis get to wear costumes the whole time. And I feel like for Tom, they just went like, okay, we're just going to put you in something slightly more comfortable because you're going to have a lot more shots than everybody else. And I'm like, damn it. He can alter his clothing to look like whatever he wants. He chose this. I'm just saying. Which
weird thing I loved about this is you mentioned how he can dress however he wants. In the second episode, when they go to MCU Walmart and he dries himself with his magic, I thought that was really friggin' clever.
Yeah, that was a neat little touch.
It's like I don't want my shoes to squeak.
Like I love little moments like that where characters who have special powers use them for just totally mundane things.
Yes.
You know, like, you know, you like someone with like fire powers. How come you never see people with fire powers using their powers to cook their food? Like, how are people with fire powers not just like amazing chefs?
This is what D&D is for.
Prestidigitation right there.
But anyway,
Kat,
you're about to say something.
Yeah, so I think the whole thing, I love the retro look of the TVA. I love how it looks. It sort of gives it, like, to us, like, our Western senses. I don't know how this would look outside of, you know, North American culture, but to me, it has sort of this timeless look to it that just, it looks good. It looks so good. The whole TVA just has this delightful retro look to it, and then also some really futuristic shit going on. It's so cool.
Yeah. Can we talk for a moment about like the backdrop of the windows in the TVA of like the rest of the world and how that looks straight out of the cover of a 1950s sci-fi novel?
Yes, exactly.
I think it's called Chronopolis. I think it's the name of the background, but I'm not 100% sure.
Like I was like that really impressed me. Was that I want a poster of that, because that just like I'm a sucker for like old school sci-fi art, and like you could have seen that image on like the cover of one of my dad's analog magazines.
Like how they in the past would have thought the future was going to look like.
Yeah. So, wrapping things up. So, let's start giving our. Is there anything else that stood out about the series that you'd like to talk about? Briefly, Mike.
I took a look at my life because I was in a very depressed point when I watched this, but the last episode really hit me in a very particularly special way. Looking at the relationship between Sylvie and Loki, and they talk about nexus points a lot, and I've talked about that too. Just different decisions your life could have went down. And at one point while I was watching Loki, especially in like the last few minutes, and this is going to sound weird, but follow me here. I think I saw one of my own variant timelines and how it would have played out. And I'm not saying my life would have been better there than it is now. Would I be an amputee? I don't know. Would I be with my wife I am with now? Probably not. Would I be happier? I don't know. But it's fascinating to think about the possibilities, but also be grateful for what you have in your life. And there's somebody in my life, and I refer to them as, you're my variant timeline. And to me, that signifies, I know I could have had something with you at one point. We're still close friends. I love you as a friend, and I will always be there for you. So I got a life affirmation out of this series to be thankful for the relationships you have in your life. Be thankful for the choices you've made. Sometimes you make some bad ones, and that's okay. because your destiny's not set. You can choose for yourself. You don't have to be what people expect you to be. You choose your own destiny. And I think that's what I walked away with Loki, and why I love this series so much, because it gave me new perspective on what I have in my life right now.
Okay, Kat, anything else that stood out that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, it didn't do any changing life perspectives for me, unfortunately. I do want to talk briefly about the Sylvie Loki thing, because that is something that did not sit right with me. I did not see any two-sided romantic chemistry there. It definitely, to me, felt like Loki was into Sylvie, but Sylvie was... I didn't get a vibe of Sylvie being into Loki, and it felt wrong. It felt weird, because they're the same person. And if this was some, like... I thought they were going to go towards, like, this is learning to love yourself in, like, getting over your narcissism way, but they went the full romance route, and that I did not enjoy. I didn't like that at all. No, didn't like the taste of that in my mouth.
So is there something they could have done to fix it, or would you prefer they just throw it out altogether?
Go figure, the local asexual aromantic doesn't see the need for a fucking romance in every single story. They could have not had a romance and it would have been fine. They could have been BFFs. They could have been like, hey, you're another version of me, and that's really great, and we're like the same person, and I can empathize with you on such a deep, intimate level without it being romantic. I don't know why they had to take it to a romance in order for Loki to have any sort of self-actualization. That it just didn't sit right with me. And it sort of really kind of, it didn't ruin the end for me, but I certainly would have enjoyed the series a lot more if they hadn't gone down the romantic route. The other thing, no, I won't talk about that. Never mind. Anyway, Alligator Loki was the best thing ever. Please, for the love of everything, give us lots and lots of Alligator Loki merch. Please.
Although I'm pretty sure that animal is actually a crocodile.
How is there
No,
not a
it's an
Stuffy
alligator.
at Avengers Campus right now?
I'm relatively certain it's an alligator based on the fact that the Twitter, official Twitter, to get the little icon is Alligator Loki. It does not look like...
I'm looking at pictures, and it. I think they actually use two animals for this, because I'm seeing ones where it is clearly an alligator, and others where it's clearly a crocodile. So.
A thing that I had a slight problem with, and this is probably just due to the way that this was marketed, but when we first got trailers, one of the big things that they kept throwing in the trailer was President Loki, which means that there is an absolute ton of President Loki merch, but President Loki was not in it all that much. And technically other characters like Kid Loki and Old Man Loki and fucking even Alligator Loki had more screen time.
Yeah, I want a Kid Loki toy.
They get pops.
I think you can actually get one through the Disney store, I think.
So what I was trying to say was that the number one most neglected is Boastful Loki, and you can read fully into that, exactly what that's about. But there's a lot of, like, there's so much President Loki merch and almost no Boastful Loki merch, even though one of them had significantly more screen time. Not that any of them had a whole lot of screen time, but that bothers me, and I wish they'd do something about that. But I can't control the merchandising lords at Disney, so just give me some Alligator Loki stuff. That shit is cute. That is so cute.
Okay. For me, the thing that's, well, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll save for when we get to the final general thoughts. All right. So, final thoughts on Loki as a series. So, let's start wrapping things up. So, Birdman, what are your final thoughts on Loki?
I think this is absolutely essential viewing to understand parts of Phase 4 if you really want to get some context. It's a great character piece. And like I said, for me, it gave me something to really think about and kind of chew on at a unique point in my life. And I'm thankful for that. And the fact that I was completely wrong about this series is a testament to showing that Disney, yeah, they're about making money and making cool television shows, but considering how powerful WandaVision was with its analysis of grief and coping mechanisms and trying to move on and move forward, Falcon and Winter Soldier talking about racial inequities, but still doing the right thing. Didn't hit as hard, but there were some really good speeches in it. And Loki shows a different path to how you choose to live your life. And I think that's important. And I hope more people watch this series. I can't wait for season 2. I think this is some of the most powerful MCU stuff to come out in the last couple of years. And I cannot wait for season 2.
Okay, Kat, your final thoughts?
I am really excited to see how this is going to be connected to the bigger multiverse, the new phase that's coming, because obviously this is going to have an impact on Doctor Strange and Ant-Man and everything. So I'm really, really excited to see how they are going to bring this into the feature films. Like Mike said, I think this is essential viewing. I can't imagine that anybody hasn't already watched this, but if you know, like, it's going to be important. And I'm just really excited for what else they have. It honestly, the last 3 shows have given me a lot of confidence in future shows, especially now that What If is starting to release. It makes me feel like, you know, there's a lot of crappy superhero TV shows out there, and you know that it's Disney and they could just like slap a Marvel character into something and make a bunch of money and not really care if they're making a good product. But these TV shows are so consistently good, even though they have their flaws in there. I just think that they're really good overall, just really fun. And it just gives me so much confidence that like other future TV shows are going to be really good too.
Like, I can't wait for Miss Marvel, for example. I'm so excited for that.
Okay, well, my final thoughts. I mean, as I said, there's lots of little things that I like about Loki. You know, I like, you know, some of the characters. And I like some of the presentation. I like some of the little jokes, the little nods to Marvel history, and some of the some of the attention to the little details. But like that core conceit that it's about time travel and multiverses, and it just I you know, that core conceit I've just never really enjoyed those type of stories. So you know, that really kind of soured the whole thing for me on Loki, and I'll probably tap out on season 2. That being said, I mean, my dislike is a matter of taste, so just because I don't like it, you know, that doesn't make it an objectively bad show. And you know, you may enjoy it yourself if you watch it. So, you know, I encourage you to give the show a shot and form your own conclusions on it. So yeah, that's pretty much my only thought is, you know, don't let the fact that I don't like it, you know, don't take that as me saying it's an objectively bad show, because, you know, like that, my dislike is just a matter of taste. So watch it for yourself, draw your own conclusions. And so with that is all the time that we have for Nerd to the Third Power this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will see you guys next time. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the cat.
See you later, y'all. I'm Birdman.
All right, we'll see you next time. Taka, play us out.